What is going on, everybody? This is episode 156 of Pop Culture Crisis, a very special, not live edition of Pop Culture Crisis this Friday afternoon. My name is Brett. I'm here with my co-host. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Crisis Actors. It's Mary. It's rather lonely not having you here in the live chat, not gonna lie.
It is very sad.
But we're gonna make it through.
We are. And the guest host we have for this lonely episode, introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dane Font, marketing man extraordinaire, and the patron saint of White Boy Summer.
Does do the patron saints have like specific statues dedicated to them, like in church? Like,
well, yeah, not always, but
we
do need a statue of Dane if that's what you're getting at.
Like, look at that pose right there.
He's very stoic,
carved out of boulder and marble. It would be fantastic. See,
my preference would be this pose.
It looks very...
Or this one.
Okay, that
I
one's
like
not
that
very...
one better.
You like that one better?
Yeah.
The first one looked like it was one from the Stoics. Like he was trying to... He's like... he's going to be in... who's the main... Is that Aquinas? Was Aquinas considered a Stoic? No?
The Stoics came before Aquinas because
yeah.
he was medieval.
Okay.
The Stoics were Greek.
Perfect. Well, we got that. We got Dane as the patron saint of White Boy Summer here to join us in this special episode. We're going to talk about a couple of special things today. I'm going to bring up video games, sexualization, and how we feel like we're in another moral panic, very similar to the violence in video game stuff that was very big in the 90s. I have an article here that we're going to run through. Dane's going to have his own unique insights, being the gamer of the main gamer of the group. We're going to talk about another one of Dane's specialties, which is marketing, and that's marketing gone wrong for the Minions movie at theaters in the UK.
That's definitely my specialty.
Marketing gone wrong?
Correct.
Perfect. We're going to do that, and then Dane has another one he wants to talk about with Bethesda, so we're going to do that, and we got some stuff for Podluck. So if you, lady and gentlemen, are ready, we will just get started. Are we ready?
Yes, I'm so ready for this special Dane episode.
Dane, are we ready?
I am Dane, thus I am ready.
All right. Well, then we will get right into it. So it says... study finds video games with sexualized content do not cause misogynistic attitudes or body image issues. Now, before we get started, I want to point out that one of the easiest things to do in the world is lie with statistics. Bill Gates has proved that.
Especially pop psychology,
yeah.
Which you can do based on surveys.
Yep. And the person who did this, in this article, the person who ran these studies is the same guy who did the violence and video game stuff in the 90s. But I think there's a good amount of validity to a lot of this, and I think a lot of it ends up being a lot of whataboutism. But we'll go through it. So it says, according to results of a recent study, psychologists have found that evidence is weak that sexualized video games influence player attitudes and behavior. Do you guys know, for instance, like... at what age do we start to kind of fall into those roles of how we're going to be towards the opposite sex? It would be probably, would it be around the same time as when you're getting into these types of video games?
I mean, it obviously like starts at birth because your parents are your first models for how like gender dynamics work and how you're supposed to interact with the opposite sex. But the media that we consume is so much more prevalent than previous generations, and like kids are getting parented in a way by the media they consume. We talk
a lot about like parental controls on Netflix and stuff like they're like, it's basically like your parents are using your Netflix and your YouTube as a way of co-parenting with them when they've got other stuff to do. And I don't know if Dane, do you think that video games fall into that same category?
I think maybe like when I'm a father, it would be because like I would be cognizant of like what the video games or like the companies would entail. But like to your normal like boomer parent that calls everything a Nintendo, no, like they have no idea. They as like our favorite Beanie Boss says, like parents dislike their children very much. Yeah. And like from what I'm noticing is like they'll do anything like not to spend time with them,
which is really sad. Like I imagine for anybody who actually like as I get older, the idea of family and what family means and having a family, which becomes much more of like a concern than it ever was for me in my 20s, as cliche as that may be. You know, like we were talking yesterday about like how I kind of came to the realization that you're going to have to homeschool your kids these days, like with the way the school system is. And just the kind of those realizations to me shows you how little people actually, you know, the average person, I think, actually pays attention to what's going on in their kids' life. And sometimes not even through, you might say through fault of their own, but just the way the world is designed now, where both parents have to work. And
I hate when people say it's your fault if your kid comes across like harmful content online, because
I agree with you. It's like completely out of their control.
Yes, like they should exercise as much discretion in what their kids are exposed to as they possibly can, but ultimately, like, I think we're finding that's still not enough. And
because the media is too prevalent and there's too much of it,
you have to pay as like equally as much attention to what you're modeling to your kids as parents in your day-to-day interactions as like the interactions that they view on a screen.
Yeah.
I think it's like an impossible standard like right now, because like when I was growing up, like the expectation was that I was a certain age, thus certain topics were, let's say, like above my understanding or like above like what I should be like knowing. That, I mean, in culture in general, like that belief has been completely discarded. Like this is like a niche group that like still holds that belief, but like it is very much niche to like current society. Like every cartoon is sexualized, video games are sexualized. Teachers like insist of sexualizing students and talking about their own personal.
Yeah, at the
like,
very least, talking about bringing up their own personal lives in school.
Yeah, since
which
they're like 4.
never made sense when I was. That never happened when I was a kid.
Me neither.
I'm going to go a little bit into the article here. So it says set to have its results published in October 2022 edition of the journal the journal Computers in Human Behavior under the title "Does Sexualization in Video Games Cause Harm in Players? A Meta-Analytic Examination." The recent study sought to address the oft-touted claims of the perpetually offended, such as disgraced critic Anita Sarkeesian and numerous gaming journalists, and answer the question of whether video games with sexualized content do or do not relate to mental health or body image problems in players, and or sexualization and hostility towards women. I'm really having a hard time with sexualization today. Sexualization, sorry.
Sexualization.
So, what's funny about this, not funny, but like, there's so many ways in which we're exposed to that type of content that video, like, would you really be able to pinpoint it as that's the only thing that's causing your kid to behave that way?
Right, because sexualization is being saturated in all content for kids right now, regardless, like, because no topic is off limits at this point.
Yep.
And YouTube is like one of the biggest offenders in that way, that like we literally have AI generated kids entertainment on YouTube that's allowed to go up that has violent themes and sexual themes and like disturbing imagery.
I like to give my hypothesis as to why that, despite the fact that they're like women are, I don't want to say like overtly sexualized, but like without a doubt sexualized in the games, and why it wouldn't cause misogynistic attitudes.
Okay.
Body image issues, like I don't know, honestly, and like I think that Instagram is like such a stark competition in terms of like what actually causes body issues, that I think, you know, females that play video games are about like a drop in the ocean.
Yeah. Well, and like I'm somebody who like my Instagram feed is filled with like gym bros and girls like that would give anybody body image issues if you don't have the time to go to the gym every day of the week for 2 hours a day. So it's not just video games.
Right.
It's on every level of our society now.
Correct. But like my theory as to why it doesn't cause misogynistic attitudes is because despite being sexually attractive, these people are not one-dimensional. And typically, they are the protagonist of the story, and thus they're not morally reprehensible people. So usually it's like attractive female characters who are both moral and likable, and thus, you know, it's like a moral, likable person that just so happens to be sexually attractive.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, you know, that
so you
it
think
really
that it appeals to them for more than just that reason. They just happen to also be attractive.
And if that's true, that would exactly counteract, I don't know if I can say this on YouTube, but like the Madonna whore complex, because which theorizes that men can only see a woman as a Madonna who is like morally virtuous and therefore non-sexual,
yeah,
or a whore who is just entirely deviant and is of a sexual nature, and that's completely one-dimensional on both sides.
I mean, according to history books and like past, images that have been taken by photography, by drawing, women were both attractive and not disgusting morally. And so like the fact that now it's like it's somewhat rare, it doesn't mean that it's like impossible to be both. And like obviously I'm speaking in jest today and being a little edgy boy, but like like that isn't that like insanely condescending towards men that we like if someone is beautiful before me, like I cannot evaluate anything else besides them. I can't evaluate their morals. I can't evaluate their intellect. I can't evaluate, their general upstanding, like contribution to society.
That expects less of the player, you being the example here. But what do you think of one of the picture examples here is from Final Fantasy 14? Did you play that?
Yeah.
And in this example, do you think that these characters were like not one-dimensional and they had like their own stories, therefore it wasn't
so I'm trying to look for
it wasn't like reducing them to
It's the second picture
sexual
down, third picture down from the top.
the third. The one I'm
Final
getting
Fantasy
is
14.
Dragon Quest, which is the one I see. I don't see Final Fantasy 14. Oh, there I go. So actually these are probably like player generated characters. So like I wouldn't know, but for example, I can speak to the games that I have played, and Final Fantasy VII is a game that we referenced here.
Yep.
If you keep scrolling downwards, the character that's referenced there is Tifa Lockhart, and she is a very. I feel like some people what do the people call it, like Mary Sue or something?
Mary
Yeah,
Sue, that's doesn't need training to become the best at everything.
Right.
Yeah.
I think she is like far from
Flaws,
that,
yeah.
because they speak of her like martial arts background, in the context of the game, like she is the protagonist's like childhood friend, and her childhood friend is like literally going through a manic episode, and she's trying to like both manage him, like. And his episodes, and like integrate him back into society. So it's like she is both stunning to the eyes and a good person, and so, but again, there's other examples where they are intentionally sexualized characters, like the character that's in the top of the article that's called, she's like Mai Shiranui, and she is meant to like represent like a type of ninja whose battle style is to be distracting with her overt sexuality. So like, and she's more like of a typical like submissive, like marriage crazy, like stereotype, like ancient Asian, I guess, like stereotype woman, but it is to fit her already like very stereotypical role. Yeah. So in those cases, like, yeah, they're so cartoonish that you kind of like separate, like, that this is a character that would not exist like within nature, or like would rarely exist within nature. But
well,
like,
it fits in a fictionalized world, but
right.
It's not something you expect to come across in the real world. It's not. It's a product of storytelling,
correct,
not of the real world.
Whereas Tifa is like a far more complex character that just so happens to be attractive.
So I'm going to read a little bit more of it, and we'll get just because I want to get into the bullet points of what they're talking about here. So it says, conducted by Christopher J. Ferguson, perhaps best known for his work debunking the similar claims that violent video games inspire violent behavior. James D. Sauer, Aaron Drummond, Julia Neer, and Emily Lowe. The study explored the degree to which sexualization in games was related to both well-being, body dissatisfaction, and sexism, misogyny among players in two separate meta-analyses. In doing so, the team reportedly found that the sexualization in games was neither related to well-being, body dissatisfaction, nor sexism/misogyny. Better designed studies and those that showed less evidence for researcher expectancy of effects for sexism and misogyny outcomes tended to find less evidence for effects. They explained. It says, as it appears commonly in other realms of media effects, the evidence is weak that sexualized games influence players' attitudes and behaviors. Psychology-centric news outlet SciPost explains that these conclusions were derived from a meta-analysis of 18 other studies, all measuring the results of exposing a subject to video games both featuring and lacking sexualized content. 15 of these measured aggression towards women along with sexist attitudes, while 10 measured factors including involved with depression, body image, or anxiety. So those are kind of two separate things that they're going through here. Whether we're talking about you're talking about body image issues that it might present towards women. This is talking about sexist attitudes that would be more, I guess, I'm assuming that would have to do with men, but I guess they could be, I don't know if they're also testing women here to see if they develop their own sexist attitudes towards other women.
My analysis of this is that in most of the examples that I'm seeing, like these characters that are being sexualized to a point where it's like so outlandishly cartoonish that in nature you would not meet these people. And it really just goes to serve that, you know, it's a game and they're having fun, and usually it's from typically like more like Japanese developers. They don't have like the same proclivities that we have towards
we have a very western influence to how we look at these things.
And in fairness, like in some cases for good and in some cases for bad. Like for example, like Armika, that is like a Street Fighter character. She's like kind of like overt sexual point to like where it's like somewhat tasteless. But you know,
I want to push back on what you're saying in that these are like cartoonish, exaggerated characters, like nothing like anyone you would ever come across in real life. Because last week we were talking about how TikTok is causing people to display symptoms of mental illness and tics like that of like Tourette's syndrome, and we're seeing that people are not actually interacting with the real world as much as they should. Now that's not our problem, and that's not a problem caused by like video game developers,
which is the main question they're asking here. But you're saying it does play a role.
And there's a big problem here, like in this conversation, which I think the title of the study addresses, because it's asking, does sexualization in video games cause harm in players? Usually the conversation is, do video game players cause harm to society? And it's automatically creating some kind of the players are the enemies, and then the rest of us are the normal people. Yeah. When like everyone has been poisoned by the same culture.
Okay.
And it's not, the question isn't being asked generally out of concern for the people playing the game.
More out of the desire to demonize them in the industry itself.
Yeah, and that has its own, you know, commercial ends, like we've seen from. Like,
and it was the same in the 90s with violence in video games. Right. The same questions were being asked. So it says, speaking to SciPost, Ferguson prefaced, I've been studying the effects of video games on players for 2 decades now, most of it on violence. I think most people have come to accept that there's no relationship between violent video games and aggression or violent crime, despite some holdouts, including the American Psychological Association. However, people still ask a lot of questions about sexualization and whether games either make male players more sexist towards women, or whether women players experience more body dissatisfaction and other well-being concerns, Ferguson dismayed. It's a much smaller research field than the violence field, so we hope to bring some clarity to it. Overall, the moral panic over video games and sexualization is pretty much following the paint-by-numbers pattern of the video game violence debate, he continued. Lots of his hyperbole and moral outrage, but very little evidence that the video games are causing any harm to either male or female players. What's interesting about this is we have now come like full circle. Like I imagine that the people who are that you're going to get who are going to be making these complaints will be on the very, very, like in the 90s with the video games, it would have been conservative, religious, right-leaning organizations, the same ones that were trying to get Harry Potter banned from your schools. Now it is the Jezebels and the Voxes, the Slates and the Mary Sues of the world that want to do this because it happens to line up with their feminist ends of their arguments that they're making here.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like it's weirdly switched. The party's switched.
At
last.
I have what I hope is a fresh take on the violence in video games debate, and then it's being carried over to sexual content. Violence in video games doesn't make people more violent. I think it makes, and also because people who play video games that aren't mobile games, they're mainly men.
Yeah.
We can say like violence in video games does not make men more violent.
Men are more violent. Period. Like,
I think it makes men less violent. And I think that's probably a bad thing because what you need is male violence in a controlled environment.
Jordan Peterson would agree with you.
And video games, I think, are like leading certain men to believe that they're blowing off steam and expressing that urge to roughhouse, to hunt, to fight in this controlled environment that's on a screen.
So you think it's filling
but it's
a need.
not satisfying the end that you think it's satisfying, and it's making you it's just suppressing the desire,
fulfilling a need without actually giving you like an outcome that's beneficial.
Yeah, I think the simulated violence in video games is making men just suppress whatever urge they have to like fight and hunt or like let out that steam in a controld way.
Then is the same thing happening now with the sexualization of these characters?
Yeah,
is that
to
doing
carry
it, with
it
men
over
in their sexual identity?
To carry it over, that's what I mean. Is like maybe.
But I feel like every intellectual pursuit is characterized that way. Like the same critiques that you are now giving video game players were once given to people that read a lot of books. It's like.
Well, what would be the thing that like reading fantasy suppresses in you? If anything, I think it frees something in you.
Well, it's not as much of like what suppresses and like how you let off steam as much as you are spending your time in a way that is not physical. Thus, all these like interpretations are made upon you.
But I would argue that maybe reading a book is superior because you're acting upon a book, and anything that's like digital media, I believe, is acting upon you. I think that it's very different.
Because one is more interactive, or because
reading a book requires you to put in a lot more mental effort.
Absolutely not. Than video games, absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. By the way, I am a literature and English major, and my hot take for the year is that reading is the most overrated form of consumption of the, and I would put my life behind this. Like,
I mean, truly. I don't even believe in mass literacy, and I still disagree.
Well, fine, but like reading is the most overrated method of data, intake. Videos are far superior, and audiobooks are like superior to that of reading.
Well, if you think data intake is the end of reading,
I mean,
I don't think
it's that and entertainment. Like, what else is there? Education. What else is there?
Because none of us agree on what the words entertainment or education even signify anymore.
Well, but between us, like, I'm sure we had a closer definition.
I think the fact that like reading used to be something exclusive to upper class people, and education used to be something only accessible to nobility, shows that we placed a very high value on it. And it's not for data intake, and it's not for diversion only. It's for edifying yourself at the deepest level. And it's just, when I say reading is requiring a lot more effort from the reader than video game or like digital media, video games in general require from the player or the watcher, I mean that
there's a bunch of reading in games. Like my proficiency in English comes exclusively from playing video games.
Yeah, I feel like there's maybe too much dialogue, right?
There's a lot of it, and like in old games, like there was no voice acting, so you would have to read.
What I mean is that it's requiring a lot more active imagination to not be seeing it in front of you. That's just true. I mean,
I think it's a different
especially when we're placing so much emphasis on like the insane graphics of this video game. It's like real life when like, and in movies too, like with this CGI mess that we're seeing, like with Avatar 2, it's just like the CGI water looks almost real, like it's real water when you could have just like recorded water.
So I want to ask one more question before we wrap this one up. So it says, obviously we go through these cycles of blaming media for social problems. Ferguson reminded, at least with fictional media, the evidence often reveals that we're probably scapegoating media and fiction. And fiction rarely causes social problems. Again, to be fair, advocating for better representation of females in games can be a worthy cause, even if the games don't have harmful effects. He concluded. He says, "I support those efforts. I just hope advocates don't misrepresent. Oh, advocates. Okay, I was like advocates. Don't misrepresent the evidence as part of their efforts, which is unfortunately all too common among the advocacy groups." That's what you talked about earlier. That basically the idea is that it's the same thing. We're just going through the same thing over again. So is this a holdout of just the continual growth of social problems in our culture and the breakdown of the family and just the kind of the decline of the West anyway?
Why is that where we keep on ending our topic discussions? It's just that like everything sucks and here's a symptom of it.
Because art imitates life, and life as it is right now is like a constant decline of values.
And I'm not trying to make it like depressing.
What I hate about this is like this is a conversation that has a potential to actually help people or like show concern for like how our media affects us.
So what would you
and it just turns into like some kind of, again, like a proxy war for like social issues.
So okay, then you think that it's something that we could get to, like how would you think the media should go about doing that?
I don't know.
By virtue of the media we choose to create?
The media is do you mean like the media that covers this, or the media
that's being made,
that is being consumed? Like
I think we can all agree that the media that's being covered is going to be covered biased by everyone, because everyone has their own interpretation of these arguments. How do you think the media that's being created could be done to better affect change in society?
I mean, I hate that the end of like creating media at this point is like, how am I going to affect change in society with this? Like, why does that need to be the end of it when it actually like lowers the quality of the product because you had a preconceived notion of like what it can do to the real world? Like, it's very on the nose, and then it's not creative anymore. But like ultimately, I don't know if I'm like the best person to speak on that because I don't play video games.
Dane, do you think change things or leave them as they are?
I think that as a marketing man, I've learned that most people do not know what they want. And that is why algorithms are highly successful, because they study your behavior and deduce what you want. And usually they know better than the person itself. That could be a testament to the education system on the world as a whole. But I think the way for... I think this isn't as much an issue as the media, because like we are the media, you know, like we're media. I think it's more of an issue of artists and like how they have to stop trying to appeal to mass ideas and start having to appeal to ideas that are not being conveyed, because like there's only so many times that like Shakespeare can be like robbed and like done over again under a new like flesh and new name, and like people's like, it's original. Like we live in like brave and new times. Like let's have something that reflects the brave and new, and instead of like the old and contrived and boring and sterile.
All right,
that got very cerebral for a conversation about like video game characters wearing
Anime
skimpy
titties.
outfits
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
anime titties. Yeah.
All right, well then we're going to move on past that, and we are going to talk about another one of Dane's expertise, which is marketing. Not just video games, not just anime titties, but video games. but so it says box office. Minions: The Rise of Gru shatters 4th of July records with $125.1 million debut. And that's kind of just the setup for what we're going to talk about, which is basically like this is like the four gazillionth Minions movie. And I do laugh at the idea of people like wondering like, how does this movie make this much money, but Lightyear can't make like it fell like another 64% this weekend. But maybe the answer is in the marketing, in what we would call viral marketing. And that's this article here. It says cinema canceled future screenings of Minions after staff abused with objects thrown at them. And I just thought of Dane immediately, not because Dane throws objects at people. He doesn't, I swear. But because it shows you the power of stuff like TikTok, of social media.
And memes.
Exactly. So it says, a cinema was forced to cancel screenings of the latest Minions film after some stunningly bad behavior from people turning up in suits as part of a viral trend. Honestly, even in TikTok terms, this is a strange one, as you can see below. Do you guys remember like when flash mobs were a really big thing in like the 2010s?
Yeah.
I tried to organize one and failed miserably. When people were like, we gotta practice, and it was like, oh,
like
God.
like a lot of the dance trends that come out now were born out of like dance flash mobs that were very big back then. And that was the first thing I thought of when I saw this. It's just a lot easier to organize and set up now. Because of TikTok and stuff like that. So it says, okay, there's a whole lot to unpack here, and it's very, very strange, but we'll try to get through it together. Basically, it seems as if, for whatever reason, loads of people have decided to turn up to watch Minions: The Rise of Gru, wearing suits and wreck the whole show by disrupting the film, even chucking stuff at the staff in some cases. These people, who are calling themselves gentle minions, have reportedly vandalized cinemas and left children in tears because of their shenanigans. Well, you don't ever want to produce shenanigans that leave children in tears. It's a bad thing.
I can't help but find it hilarious.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Well, it's like Minions annoy us, and now we're going to annoy you. I like it. It's organic. It's subversive.
It's just more proof that sentience amongst humanity is like a very, very, very rare trait.
Do you think
truly,
these are NPCs?
The gentle minions?
I think that 95% of the population is NPC.
Okay.
Like, I think that, again, like, sentience is a rare trait. I don't think I was sentient my whole life. I think
you had an awakening of sorts?
I think, like, by some, like, miraculous reason, like, sentience was, like, brought upon me at, like, a certain point, and it comes from individualism, and, like, this is not individualism. This is, like, people following trends in order to be the most popular individual to do it.
Current thing.
But, yeah, exactly. But they're just, like, again, like a drop in the ocean. Some people are like a tinted drop in the ocean, so it's like a yellow drop in the ocean, and that will be perceived as novel and interesting and brave and whatever. But I attribute it to this. It's like B-boobs doing zeros and ones.
So I would love to know how they organize. So it says the only cinema on the Channel Island has now resumed showing the film, the second installment of the utterly wretched yet inexplicably popular Minions franchise, but has announced conditions for anyone wanting to see the movie. On Facebook, the cinema informed anyone wishing to see the film must book in person upon arrival, must not wear a suit, and that large groups of people without adults will not be admitted into the cinema. These also added that anyone disrupting any of the showings will be booted from the premises immediately. The Post explained, following yesterday's post, we are tentatively putting Minions back on sale for families and anyone looking to enjoy the film. We deeply regret how difficult it may be currently for families and young children to plan to come and book for this film. The Post added, as funny as we found it at first, we will not admit anyone wearing the suit in line with the TikTok trend. Yesterday, Mallard Cinema manager Daniel Phillips Smith told the BBC News, it's been absolutely heartbreaking. Now, I think that's editorial.
Like, come on, that's so funny.
That's hyperbole.
The overreaction is what gets me.
Is this a British thing? Do you think?
It is because they haven't released it here, right?
I thought it was here. Yeah.
Did they release it at the same time?
It's out here. Yeah. Like I said, it made 125 million this weekend.
Oh, okay.
4th of July. They don't have 4th of July in Britain. Take that.
Maybe that means more of them are seeing it than us.
So it says, yeah. So, do you think that like a trend like this is indicative of like the ability to build organically? Now you say it's because they're NPCs, or is it the ability for these franchises, when done right, to organically market through something like TikTok?
I disagree with what you said that it's like NPCs doing their zeros and ones, because it's the same like inverted marketing campaign that they did with Morbin Time, where in a way you're just making the marketing executives the butt of your joke and confusing them with how to respond.
Correct, but like one person comes up with a clever scheme as to, hey, you know what would be funny if we convince these people that this like garbage movie is in fact good. And one person does it, and then the swarm of people be like, I like that, and like, you know, they act as if. And this is another example of that. It like to be like a little more kind, this can be like what's your generation again?
Z.
This could be like Gen C's like attempt to like confraternize with their did I say that word right?
Fraternize?
Yeah, confraternizar.
I've never heard confraternize, just fraternize.
That might be in Spanish then. To fraternize with their fellow Gen Z and, you know, like have a social fun event in the real world. And to that end, I'm like, I commend you, and like, please continue to like meet in person and be human. But, you know, it's just, this is like, what is different between this and like the Ice Bucket Challenge?
The Ice Bucket Challenge? Well, I don't know. The Ice Bucket Challenge was originally something that people were doing for charity, because you would
ALS.
You would either donate to ALS research, or you would do the Ice Bucket Challenge, and then ultimately
it's done for
people
clout,
people forgot or never even learned what ALS is.
Correct.
Or what they were being asked to donate to.
And for celebrities, it became a vapid way of self-promoting.
Yeah, that's different. I think that this is maybe a good thing. Like, I have a good feeling about this, because just like with Morbius, we're like using this post-ironic humor to dunk on them for to dunk on like these franchises for doing these money grabs. Like, you just released this is the 5th Despicable Me derivative movie.
I thought it was like,
but
oh yeah, okay.
Is it a dunk if you use yourself as proxy? If I put myself on clown makeup and I'm like, clown world, like, did I in fact dunk? You know what I'm saying?
You think you made a fool of yourself if you did that?
I mean,
and then the gentle minions are therefore making fools of themselves.
They've become what they hated. This is what I'm
Do
saying.
you think that this is like positive for the Minions franchise? Like, this is an overall positive for them?
This is like irrelevant to them.
I would say it's got less to do with whether it's good or bad for it, but rather it's an organic indicator of like where, like, of just how much clout the movie has right now. For instance, there was a lot of trends going on, like when Top Gun came out, there was the trends of people walking into the movie looking normal, and they come out with a mustache, wearing like a bomber jacket. Or with Spider-Man, like there was a whole bunch of TikToks about Spider-Man when Spider-Man No Way Home came out, involving, there's the one of like Spider-Man saves a guy, and he's like holding the guy really tight, and the guy has to make a face because they're like uncomfortably close chest to chest with like Spider-Man. Like, there's these organic
But I think
social
that's
media
because people enjoyed those
Yeah.
movies, not because they're trying to make fun of them, which is the case. Like I've seen so many tweets where people are just making a complete joke out of the idea that they would be excited to see Minions.
But the movie made a lot of money.
Well, it made a lot of money because it's the summer and people are taking their kids there
120. That's a record breaking.
shut up for 2 hours.
But that's not just like a little bit of money. That's
Which, I mean, it's just true. Like, yeah, it's making money, but
Maybe I'm just sick of irony. I love satire, as everyone knows, but like it's gotten to the point, like, if everything is ironic, nothing is ironic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we wore suits to watch like a kids show. It's like, okay, well,
it can definitely go too far until it's like not funny anymore. I understand what you're saying.
And it's not even that it's not funny because most people aren't funny, but it's like
that is very true. Very, very few. Most people should strive to be amusing because like 1 in every 100 people is a legitimately, and even that might be a low estimate. Like if you have a large group of friends, you probably know one person who is a legitimately funny individual, but that recounting memes does not count as being funny because that's something somebody else came up with.
Right.
You may have good delivery, but very few people are actually legitimately funny people. Right. Like, so you're right about that. But
I think people should be aimed to be like pleasant. I think people should be aimed to be like courteous to their friends and to be real. I don't want to sound like Jordan Peterson. Like I'll be talking about how much I hate fat chicks. You know, if I'm JBP, but nothing.
Sorry,
not hot. But you know, it's just.
So you don't like gentlemen is because they're threatening polite society.
we have become the thing we hate.
I don't like it because it's just more lower common denominator of like we're not follow. I don't know, like. I don't know, like they just like we're different. Like we're not.
We're the subversive underdog trendsetters.
You're not like you
Is
are.
That what you mean?
You are, you know, cookie dough normie. You know, there's like
I'm ready for
Rocky Road normie.
I'm
There's
ready
like
for
cookie dough
return.
normie.
I'm ready for the return to normie. Like I'm ready
Well,
for
we're here.
to get back to normie society. Like I'm over like.
But
over the
normie
rest of it.
moves were the world moves, and the world right now is like in an ironic, like self-flagellating state, and like here is the ironic normie, and over here's the self-flagellating normie, and where is like the people, you know, just trying to do novel art.
Highest film opening over Independence Day. For like, so I don't think that's now the true indicator of whether this movie is actually.
I don't think making money makes it.
I didn't say it made it
like
good.
A movie of any value.
It does make it of value.
Of monetary value, but not anything long lasting.
But we're talking about cultural influence right now, and one way to measure cultural influence is how many people were willing to shell out money to go see it.
Cultural influence right now.
Yeah. I'm not saying long term.
Down the line, I mean, it's Despicable Me was successful over 10 years ago.
Long time ago.
And now like there's something so derivative of it that like what are we even watching? They're like characters that don't speak, and it's making fun of you basically for even watching it. Like that's why I don't mind a meme campaign that like is it just like with It's Morbin Time, like it's making fun of the idea that we're like excited to see this trash.
But you know what? Like that criticism, I feel like it's ultimate. By the way, this has been like a Dane doesn't shut the hell up episode, and I'm terribly sorry. But like that criticism, like does not get to the ends we want. What we want is for art to be interesting again, and what we're learning is being a little edgy boy and edgy girl and being like, I like this ironically. Only gets us more of it because
I don't think it's creative. It's in itself.
For me, the point that it's creative or non-creative is irrelevant. Like what I want is for, you know, I want another Memento. Like, and I don't mean like the Memento Part 2. I'm still confused. No, that's not what I'm talking about. That was a great. Thank you.
He means a movie in the same that says culturally impactful.
Right.
Okay.
An interesting idea and a new one.
So it says the latest trend sees groups of lads donning their best clothes to watch Minions: Rise of Gru before documenting their experience on the social media platform. You can see an example below. It says, once inside, the undoubtedly smart-looking bunch then sit in a row with their hands together, with only their fingers touching, just like Gru does in the film. But the rowdier bunch of Gen Z cinemagoers have been seen to applaud and cheer throughout the film, prompting other viewers who are not part of the trend to request refunds at the box office. So there, it's the same as like people who went to see Spider-Man and got really excited, but there's something less organic about it. Like these kids are doing it because they're part of a group.
They're making fun of the people who are watching it.
I don't know if that's what this is.
I think that is exactly what they're doing. I mean, and how I want to counter what you're saying, Dane, is I think that they, in a way,
why fight me?
Because I love to. I love fighting with you.
I know.
How I want to counter what you're saying is in a way, they're expressing the same desire you're expressing, that they want something new and original, and there's nothing on offer, and they're making fun of the trash that is being fed to them.
I'm saying if you're organized enough to like put a suit with all your friends and watch a garbage movie, perhaps.
Which, by the way, you still promulgate the problem. Like, you still push the problem.
Yeah,
because
you're
then
making
giving money
it
to
profitable. You freaking idiot! Like, try.
I don't think they thought that far ahead.
I know they don't. That's what I'm saying. And so what I'm saying, like, let me think far ahead enough for you, okay? You bunch of zeros and ones. Try to make art of your own instead of through your mocking making it profitable. And guess what? There's not, if this Minions movie is successful, guess what? There's gonna be another one.
Yep.
And in the next one, they're gonna like dress as like literally in yellow and be like blah 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 blah, and like make it even more profitable. And then there's like Too Fast, Too Minion, and it'll never stop.
You could make the argument that we kind of cause the same problem here by talking about these things and bringing attention to problems or to things that we take issue with. Granted, I think we're being a little bit more. I think we're being a little bit more open-ended about our discussion. Like, we make it about a discussion about it, but we're still contributing to the problem.
Listen, I proposed to Tim the Danish Handsome and Stunning podcast, and he insisted on Pop Culture Crisis.
I know.
Okay, so like take your complaints with him.
Perfect.
Because that would have been my idea for a podcast.
So what should they have done rather than go to Minions and dress up in suits?
I mean, are you asking a bunch of teenagers to like make art?
I know, yeah. It's like
yeah.
Dane, we have very high expectations of these kids.
Because
it'll be garbage, but like they'll grow to make it good.
They're stupid kids. I mean,
everyone's
I'm just saying,
a stupid kid.
People are plebs, and most people aren't capable of making art that resonates with anyone else.
But I'm not talking to the zeros and ones. I'm talking to the guy with the original idea who clearly
Gentle Minions.
Yeah, who clearly like saw because it's funny, right? It's funny, and like he had ironically his army of minions do it for him, and I'm like, weaponized.
Well, I know nothing about this. I don't know who the host of this thing was or who the mastermind is.
Come on the pod.
Come on the podcast.
Speak up for yourself. Exactly.
So I guess we'll have to see where the next trend goes. But this might be something I might be more interested in following, just because I know you hate it so much. Is the various, whether you think they're organic or not, trends that come out of promotion for these movies. We'll have to see where it goes.
And understanding they're young kids, and like, had you seen me when I was 14, like buddy, like I'd be doing something probably worse than this. So,
Perfect.
It is relatively harmless.
Correct.
I mean, other than the families who had their days ruined, but they got refunds. So, all right, let's move on. It says Bethesda keeps offering jobs to Fallout London modders. Dane, you want to lead this one?
Sure. By the way, this is like often here in Pop Culture Crisis, we discuss like why is I was about to curse. I just love cursing. Why are things trash? And this is like a common conversation we have. Like, why does this suck? Why does this suck? Why does everything suck?
I love to ask the questions and offer no solutions. It's my job.
Well, it seems that someone has stumbled upon the solution inadvertently.
By accident.
Okay, so let me read a little bit about this article. Bethesda keeps offering jobs to Fallout London modders. The DLC-sized mod has certainly caught the eye of Bethesda. I read that wrong, but like, sue me.
Oh, I transpose words sometimes. You just roll right through it, man.
Sweet. The team behind Fallout 4's DLC-sized mod, Fallout London, has certainly caught the eye of Bethesda as the developers keep offering its members jobs. The Fallout London Twitter page shared an update below, which explained that the lead technical advisor, Ryan Johnson...
Not to be confused with Ryan Johnson, who ruined Star Wars.
Continue. Correct. No, this is a legendary Giga Chat. Would be leaving the modding team to start working for Bethesda. This marks the second time that we know of the developer has hired straight from Fallout London team. And blah, 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 blah. Not only that, but Fallout London's project manager, Dean Carter, was also offered a position at Bethesda UK's office to work at Fallout 76, though they declined in order to see the mod's development through to the end. And I emphasize that not because I am reading impaired. That is aside. That is to like prove a point. So this is just one example of several examples of beautiful, brave, and bold people on the internet fixing in a matter of hours what multinational mega corporations cannot do in years.
It's like that guy who fixed Superman's mustache face in Batman vs Superman, and like he did it in like half the time. And Warner Brothers spent millions of dollars trying to CGI out Henry Cavill's mustache.
Correct. It's because like the bureaucracy and, you know, deadlines and meetings and like probably ESG scores stop people from actually, get this, doing their job.
Yep.
And this brave and beautiful person said, "Oh, thank you for the offer, but I'd actually like to do the thing that you'd be hiring me for, because I am cognizant and smart enough to understand that you will hire me and then you will put me on a suit to watch Minions and watch the movie."
Or in this case, send him on Zoom calls and force
Right.
him to do a bunch of inane bureaucratic nonsense that prevents him from doing his job.
It won't be done because like someone on your team wants credit for the project that you're doing. Like your supervisor says it's, by the way, no, like this is like common in corporate America. Like I'm sure like all of you that work normal jobs are very familiar with this. You know, like your boss says that it's a bad idea. You know, it says, yeah, it sounds good, but I don't know how profitable it would be. Like right now we're doing Too Fast, Too Furious. It's all about family. You know, it's like, and that's making a S ton of money.
Yes,
so
it is.
it's like, by the way, another examples of things where like a brave and beautiful person independently has fixed something. A modder fixed the loading times for Grand Theft Auto 5.
Mm-hmm.
Something that, again, a multinational corporation wasn't able to do. The Street Fighter 5, I referenced the worst game of all time. A guy in 6 hours fixed the net code that, again, another large corporation. Thank you. Oh my! I was never gonna get that.
This is the one we were talking about yesterday,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the Street Fighter 5, the difference between the correct inputs is literally fractions of a second. Thus, if your online code is not good enough to register fractions of a second, and like what happens before that, the outcome of a match will be like very irregular. And when in the post-COVID world where most tournaments are going to be online, your whole game has become discredited competitively. That's another fix. Final Fantasy XIV has been known for these fixes. And this is just another example of independent people being able to do what the corporations are incapable of doing. Thus, it comes to my conclusion, what would fix movies and media and everything outside of it?
Get him away from these major corporations.
Correct. It will not come from that. It will come from crowdsourcing actually talented and driven people to do actual talented and driven things, instead of people doing things just for the lowest denominator thing, just for money.
The same thing happened when somebody when they did the de-aging from the Mandalorian on Luke Skywalker. Somebody went through and like fixed it in a very short period of time, made a deep fake that was far better than the one that ended up on the show. Think of like how awful the Halo TV series was, and then look at like the Halo fan films that have been done that are objectively, from what I understand, far superior because they're passionate about the product itself and they're not restrained. You know, certainly they don't have the, like, everyone makes the argument that, well, if you work for the corporation, the money is there to work on it, but that doesn't matter if it's hamstrung by too many bosses, too many people overseeing the project, too much red tape preventing you from doing your job right. All the money in the world doesn't fix that. Creativity and control of your work helps fix that.
Yeah, and like people think like everything in the world that throwing money at the issue will fix it.
And it doesn't.
And it doesn't, because, okay, so now we've paid Will Smith $100 trillion not to slap someone and to act a role that he has no understanding of. I'm being facetious, as I tend to be. But like my point is that if major actors don't give a beep about
Yep.
the source material do not be astounded when the source material is shit.
I talked about that last time. It's like they look at it as a stepping stone for their career or their ability to put their own agenda and politics into it. Watch any of the Batman fan films and you will get a better understanding of who Batman is, far better than any studio has been able to create.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yep.
And so I think that giving $10 million to, let's just say, for example, Final Fantasy, to Final Fantasy fans on message boards, I promise you, my friends, they will make a far superior Final Fantasy film than if you gave $150 million to whatever director you're thinking of.
Yeah. So what do we? So in this case, is this?
I have a question. Do you think that Bethesda drawing upon Fallout London is and actually like succeeding in doing so speaks to like the corruption of creative and driven people, like that they're kind of putting them on a conveyor belt to like take them for all the energy they have, but they're not actually like taking advantage of the gifts that they have.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those, like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They're like, hey, we'll give you money. Why don't you do this? It's like, well, I can't sit in my underwear, eat Cheetos, and, like, grind 6 hours on the one nuanced detail that I want when I work in corporate America. I have to do what my boss wants me to. And, like, you know, what sometimes happens in corporate America is, like, your boss doesn't want you to do well. Because, hey, if my underling is better than me, then it kind of calls into question, like, why am I in this position? And, like, it's kind of the egos and the deadlines and the whatever and the Zoom meetings and what we keep mentioning that stop these things from happening. And to your point, it's like it would take from the passion, and passion is what gets you this. And all the other fixes.
What they said about Johnson is he finished all of his expected tasks as well as a few extra ones we didn't expect him to do. His professionalism and dedication will truly be missed throughout the team. I don't think that that's something that would be appreciated in a more like corporate environment where he is expected to only do what he's told.
Yeah.
It will only be appreciated in corporate environments once everything is done and the money rolls in and it's like wunderbar. But until then, it's not.
Did he move on for like ego's sake, money's sake, and like is that? I mean, that seems to be ultimately like his fault. I mean, if he's like one of these creative driven people, and then he sacrifices that to move on to something bigger, like seemingly bigger and better.
Well, I mean, if he's looking for, maybe he doesn't have quite the understanding we do of like the way the corporate structure is. Like maybe he doesn't realize that that's probably what's going to happen once he moves on.
Hey man, you know,
I realize like creative people can have like a rose tinted view of how everything works.
And at the end of the day, you need your bread buttered. So
yeah,
like,
he still needs to make a living. Like that's and that's the hard part. Like so many people build so many of the things that they're passionate about on their time off, right? That's why maybe that's why the passion shines through on something like that, because it's not your job. It's something you do because you're passionate about the product. And sometimes, as hard as it is to understand, that type of energy transfers onto the project without really understanding why. Like it doesn't have the budget, it doesn't have the same amount of people working on it, but something about the energy, the passion from the people working on it shines through, and you don't really know why, but you know that it's there. And that's maybe that speaks to the subjectivity of art. I don't know.
Again, I still like without exception, I bet like Christopher Nolan liked Batman.
I don't know that he cared a whole ton about Batman. I think that he cares about good storytelling. And I think he cares about characters as vehicles to tell good stories.
Yeah, I'm not saying he had Batman posters and a Batman tattoo. What I'm saying is,
I know Ben Affleck had a Batman in his house and his own Batcave.
And look at the garbage he made. So like it isn't like always like a surefire thing, but it's like a healthy respect for this will continue forever. I will not ever rescind my point that Ben Affleck was the second worst Batman in history.
You were making a point. Continue. You're wrong about that one, but you had another point to make. It's fine.
Yeah, just like a healthy, at least respect for the source material is what's needed, and like nothing else will ever. No money, no studio, no high-tech equipment. Nothing will ever substitute the value of that.
These things are owned by gazillion-dollar corporations now, which make that almost impossible.
So that's why you said, like, you get a Batman or whatever simulacra. You're like, you get like an empty suit walking around and saving crime, but not in the way that he would do it. Not with like the moxie he would do.
And we're not even talking about the studio interference and the notes from producers, and you have to meet this quota and that quota, and you have to reach this goal and that goal. There is a sort of conveyor belt line to this type of production.
There's all that stuffy aspect to it, and then they cling to the like projecting the appearance of creative destruction. I don't even like the turn to like creative destruction is a more authentic creativity than working off of something that's already been created and trying to put your own unique like spin on it.
And the worst part is that they want to pretend like they're all still huge fans of these things when everyone knows it's basically just a conveyor belt factory line of products now that are being made for the means of I mean, you know, they still have to make their money back. They still have to make their I get that, but I hate the idea that they fake and pretend to still be that passionate about this stuff when they're very clearly not. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on and let's what's Ezra Miller doing today? My goodness, it's been I want to create like the thing you have at your work that says like it's been this many days since the last workplace accident, and it's gonna say it's been this many days since the last Ezra Miller incident.
Just leave it at 0 perpetually.
Just leave it at 0. So it says Ezra Miller offers to knock out retail worker in resurfaced TikTok. Now let's point out that as me and Mary always do, that resurfaced is not a thing.
Can we show the video?
I believe we should be able to show the TikTok. I'm not making a TikTok. I don't want to make a TikTok, says Jerry Seinfeld. All right.
That's an option I present people always.
Hi.
And always just knock you out, and then you won't have to panic.
Right. You just gotta knock
You just
people
let me
out.
know.
Yeah.
No? Yes?
What?
It is so awkward.
And then
it was so awkward. The kid at first was like, yeah, and then he's like, what?
And then the kid commented that the first thing he said was like he was nervous, but he wanted a picture. He like told Ezra Miller, I'm nervous, but like, can I have a picture? And this is immediately where Ezra Miller takes it. Where he's like, oh, you're nervous? I can just punch you so you won't be nervous anymore. You'll be so focused on how much your face hurts.
Can we organize a charity fight between me and Ezra Miller?
Yes.
Who are you donating to?
Whoever.
The Ezra Miller Foundation?
No.
Can I posit a scenario? If he had in jest said, how about you punch me? And then you won't be nervous anymore. Would that be
funny?
That'd be different, right?
Slapstick,
okay. So
because he's looking for an excuse. That's every day it seems of Ezra's life is he's looking for the next excuse to lash out at people.
It says the actor stayed out of the public eye over the past few months as they've faced accusations for their behavior as parents of an 18-year-old have accused Miller of brainwashing their daughter. I do like the idea that he's like now a supervillain where he's like he's not just a bad person, he's brainwashing and
they called it jet set abuse.
Yeah, that's a great term for it. But I think you should start carrying around like, you know how like rappers carry around like lean. He should start carrying around Kool-Aid. It says no. Okay. It says the video, but now remember, guys, the video is not recent. It is from 2020, and has racked up 3.5 million views on that platform alone. The 10-second clip shows a young man attempt to take a selfie with Miller, who appears to be mid-conversation with someone else. When Miller notices the camera on him, and they tell the person holding the camera, always just knock you out, and you won't have to panic. I think part of it's also him thinking he's edgy and he's trying to be mysterious and cool and like I put people off and he doesn't know, people don't know what to think of me, and he's just lame.
He's just boring. He's like Army Hammer.
Yes.
Like he's more excited by the idea that, people think of him as a villain.
He's a douche doing a disservice to the people he's trying to represent.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Is he's just
well,
like,
who is he trying to represent?
I think part of it is like, well, he's saying because if he considers himself transgender, non-binary, he's trying to like lean into this kind of avant-garde, unique personality that isn't real. It's very clearly a creation made by him to portray
because he's a boring person.
Because he's actually boring, and he's actually putting on a front. Says the uploader appears to be a comic book fan, as the hashtags and some of the comments refer to other things within the DC universe. He makes reference to Batman's contingency plan and Reverse Flash, but also explains some of the details behind the video. I asked them for a picture, and then he goes on to that. So what could he have done to be less boring? As if we were to Monday morning quarterback Ezra Miller's life, and say, like, here, you don't need to be a weirdo who, like, threatens cops with hate crimes and abuses children. You don't have to do that to be unique, dude. You could just, like, what if you just, like, started a family? That'd be pretty
No. Do not, Ezra Miller,
that
do
would be
not start a
dangerous.
family. Do not start a family.
I mean, I'm half kidding. I'm saying, like, what if he had been, like, what if, I'm saying that
you're saying, like, what if Ezra Miller did something that's actually unexpected?
Yes, rather than doing what everybody expects him to do, which is fake edgy boy humor.
I mean, it would certainly be appreciated. I think it's so obvious that he's just like one of these fake artsy types.
Is he even artsy? You were the Flash.
Remember?
Like,
Fake,
No.
like he was on like Perks of Being a Wallflower and like.
And remember, he had when he was like, he was at the gallery and he's like, everybody else wants to talk about pop culture. He's like, I want to talk about philosophy. Like
He's just like he's like Jaden Smith, like all of these, like Army Hammer, Jaden
oh my
Smith.
God, he is like Jaden
All
Smith.
of these people, they think they're a lot. They want to project this image that they're so interesting and artistic and unique, and that they somehow deserve their fame.
Maybe
but
it's
like
imposter syndrome then.
If you just acted well and promoted your work well, which you're not able to do.
Because he won't be allowed to be involved in the promotion.
Yes.
Per WB, where they basically talk about how they're like, we're going to have to use Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck to promote The Flash, because who's going to, like, they're not going to allow female reporters in there. Who knows what Ezra Miller will do to them.
What is like a similarly... like what is a movie that's similarly just one character focus where like they're in every single scene and you can't have like an ensemble of people promoting it? It only makes sense to have them promoting it.
Imagine Iron Man if Robert Downey Jr. was still doing drugs and being a general menace to society and not like this like bastion of like goodwill that he's become.
It would be Ezra Miller.
It would be Ezra.
Like what if Tom Cruise didn't promote Top Gun?
He's
like,
too busy like like creeping out your kids and like offering to punch you. Like, granted, I guess he did jump on a few couches back in his day, but that's an often misremembered incident.
I'm just saying it obviously doesn't make sense for him to not be promoting this movie, and you're also placing the other stars in such a difficult situation because you know that they're going to be asked about him every single interview.
And no, it will actually, like, they're like, we're going to test your levels of shillness, media. We are going to test just how in our pocket you are. Can you go through an entire interview with Ezra Miller
Flash without mentioning the guy who played him?
No, it's different. I'm saying they actually bring Ezra Miller in for the interview, and they're like, can you do this interview and not mention grooming, Dakota Iron Eyes, the 12-year-old in Massachusetts, the weird posts on Instagram where you talk about being from another dimension, all the guns and weed at your house with kids around? Can you not mention any of these incidents and keep a straight face without like flinching every time he moves because you're afraid he's going to punch you in the face? Can you do it?
I bet Ezra like barely even remembers the filming of this movie. It's been so long.
He looks like a completely different person. But don't worry, guys, because it says, as for the actor, Variety sources said Miller hopes to talk about the accusations against them in the future, but they're taking some time for themselves to focus on their health and healing over the coming months. What about the health and healing of the people you keep punching?
I'm just picturing him with like thinly sliced cucumbers over his eyes and like a face mask, and he's like having a spa day. He's like healing.
And then like he's like there's like a lady on the floor because he threw a chair at her because she put the things on his face wrong.
Yeah.
Healing.
You filed my nail wrong.
Exactly. Like he's like, it's one of those things where the incidents are like the stuff about grooming we had to cover because it's so serious and it's so effed up, right? Like the stuff he's accused of. But so much of it feels like Mad Libs. Like he throws a chair at someone because
the cowboy costume.
He shows back up in a cowboy costume and talks about the Rastafarian roots of Parcheesi. This isn't a real person. This is a simulation
Tobacco
glitch.
is sacred on my I'm a maker of planets.
Tobacco is sacred. Yes.
Like
he's not a real it's not a real thing. I think this might actually be the simulation glitching and it's all just
he
failing.
clearly does need help. I just don't think he wants any.
No. All right. Did you know that Rihanna is now America's youngest self-made billionaire?
Incredible.
Boots Kim Kardashian. I'm assuming they mean Kim Kardashian. She's shiny.
That's
shiny
cool.
brand.
Like when are
think
you
it's
ever gonna make
Chloe.
music again though?
When was the last time she released an album?
Like wasn't it 2016? No, 2015?
And most of this is coming from Fenty, right? Like that's
Yeah, she has Fenty Beauty and skincare and also like lingerie and like loungewear.
You know, I'm okay with like 20-year-old artists like leaving when they're ahead. Like I really hate when you know, I mean, besides
Well,
the
I don't
Rolling
know.
Stones, like everyone else that like comes back and like does art is like
overwhelmed.
beyond cringe is like a word that I can't even fathom.
What does the term in this case? I guess by self-made, they just mean that she didn't inherit the wealth, right? That she built the wealth on her own. So it says the 34-year-old singer recently made Forbes' annual list of America's richest self-made women for the third year in a row, ranking 21st overall. She's the only billionaire under 40 on the list. The next youngest billionaire on the Forbes list is Kardashian, who's 41, whose net worth is $1.8 billion. It reminds me of when every few years the WWE would be like, it's the youngest WWE champion of all time. Of course, it's like planned beforehand and it's like an outcome, but
It'll eventually be a baby. Like
yes, that would be great. So yeah, it says in March, Bloomberg reported Savage X Fenty's lingerie company was working with advisors on an initial public offering that could value the company at $3 billion. Does it ever feel like some of the numbers they throw out for these companies are just like ridiculous and fake? Like a lot of times I'm reading, like I read a lot of like Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and you see these media holding companies that sell for like 8 figures and they own like 5 properties in a podcast. And you're like, where is that price getting pumped from? It's insane.
Yeah, and I don't.
Hers obviously is different.
I don't understand why her personal brands have been so successful when there is like such an oversaturation of celebrity makeup, skincare, fashion, loungewear, everything you can imagine. Hers just kind of seemed to be like, if you did it earlier than a lot of other people, then it was a success because you had head start. But even before her, there was already like celebrity licensed everything, perfumes, makeup, everything.
Is she one of those people that you think is like generally like good for them, or does she bother you?
I'm indifferent.
I'm indifferent to
same.
to Rihanna.
I'm mostly indifferent. I mean,
I say good for her. I mean, it's proof that you can literally like. I talk about this a lot whenever people complain about like the glass ceiling here. There's always these arguments where they're like, you can't do it if you're this, you can't do it if you're that. But then there's these examples where it very clearly proves that you can do it if you're this or if you're that. So like, make up your mind.
I don't like that she's clearly in a relationship with a guy who's basically an underachiever in comparison to her.
21 Savage?
A$AP Rocky.
A$AP Rocky, yeah.
I mean, he is still like currently like doing criminal things and is like in trouble with the law while she is literally like pregnant with their child, and she is a self-made billionaire who puts up with it. It's odd. I don't think it's such a good example. And I understand what you were saying, Dane, about like it good for anyone who like gets out early because they can. And she was like still in her 20s when she released, what was it? is it Anti?
That's the only
Anti
banger
was
I
her
know.
last album, I think, in 2016, and she was still in her 20s when that came out. That was the last thing she released. So I mean,
say
like,
good for her.
good for her for like, yeah, like starting her own thing that's not owned by anybody else.
I just wish there was a little bit more consistency in like either this country is like irredeemable and nobody can make it and nobody can get ahead and the glass ceiling is this tall and everybody fails, or these things are real and you have to acknowledge them.
I mean, I don't think she's some kind of example of the American dream or anything.
That would be me.
That would be Dane. So, all right.
Yes.
Before we finish up, I do want to talk quickly about Travis Scott is no longer up to his antics at concerts. I'm sure on the advice of a lawyer. It says Travis Scott stops concert and orders fans to stop dangling from trusses because he learned his lesson and he's being sued into oblivion right now
Ironic.
to the tune of over $1 billion.
Woo!
It says Travis Scott stopped his show Monday night because several fans put themselves in danger, and it's impossible not to think about the tragedy at Astroworld when looking at the video. Travis opened for Meek Mill at the Coney Art Wall in Coney Island. He took the stage at around 8 p.m. and DJ'd and then performed. The crowd was packed in, so much so that a couple of concert goers climbed up on a lighting truss and dangled as they watched Travis perform. One of the fans must have planned ahead as he was wearing a Spider-Man costume. Good for the Spider-Menace. I imagine, yes. We should have J. Jonah Jameson saying, get down from there, Spider-Man.
This is like the person that was doing this is like the older brother of the kid that was like with a suit, like doing the Minions thing. It's like, this was like they're all the same.
Equally NPC.
Like
behavior.
I'm picturing them
Yeah.
like going out of their house at the front door, and the
I wanna
little
be on
brother goes
TikTok.
right to the Minions concert, and the older brother goes left to the Travis Scott concert.
Basically.
It's, and then there was another one. I don't know if it was Adele or there was another thing that I was reading this weekend about somebody who stopped a concert multiple times this weekend so that they could like stop. But like, I'm just picturing like concerts are now just huge virtue signals.
Oh, you mean Halsey? Or?
Was it Halsey? No, it wasn't Halsey. It could.
I think it was her that she was like talking about abortion and like everyone. Like,
No, this was over like
More recently than that one?
This was like, yeah, I just read it today, and it had something to do with like stopping people because they like looked like they were unhealthy, like for reasons like it was virtue signaling, not about that. It was more about just like, look how good of a person I am for stopping this concert, and you know. So now
Billie Eilish does that a lot too.
Yes, she does. That was the first person we covered when doing that. It's such a virtue
stops
signal.
shows if she thinks like someone got like slightly pushed in the crowd.
I
no one looks more depressed than her. Like I don't like she is like she's always like sad and droopy eyed and like I don't know.
And I posited the scenario that attention-seeking minions will one day pretend to have like a seizure so that they can get Billie Eilish to stop the concert.
I hate that like everyone is like kind of soft like that now, but also
get in the mosh pit, and if it breaks your legs, it breaks your legs.
that's
The show
lost
must
on a
go
lot
on.
of people, isn't it?
Yep.
I don't know a lot about like the Astroworld incident and whether Travis Scott was like aware of it happening as some
You have to
people
watch
claim.
the video.
But like I think that to the extent he was aware that there was chaos and people getting hurt, he let it go on because he like felt edgy by doing so.
He has a long reputation of like
Yeah.
encouraging that behavior at his concerts, which to be fair, there's a fine line between incitement and just being an entertainer who is doing his job.
And it
But
should be security's job
Exactly.
to keep people safe, not the performer.
another example of Hollywood having just literally going to the bottom of the Yelp pile to hire their security guards. There's Oscars,
Right.
slap. There's Dave Chappelle, stabby stab. Like literally, like
And
where are they
Britney
hiring
Spears'
these?
home invasion?
Britney Spears' house gets invaded by her ex-husband. Where are they finding these security guards? Craigslist? I think they are.
Probably.
And the video killed me
Great deals.
from the Britney Spears incident because they literally were just following him around like tepidly being like, can you go away? Like,
Could you leave, please?
while
We don't
you're
like you
trespassing in someone's home.
here. We don't like you here. Could you leave, please? Please, if you could, I would like you very much. Mrs. Spears has a very big day today. She's got a wedding.
Could
She's
you
very
please be
excited.
I'm her
polite?
husband.
I know that you're her ex-husband, but if you could please leave, we would be very grateful. Please, sir. Please. Please leave.
We're still married.
So at least it wasn't Kevin Federline. I imagine that
Oh,
that's
God.
like, hey, no. If we have to imagine that Kim and Kanye get back together, I want Britney and K-Fed to get back together. Bring back the 2000s.
That's the same kind of logic that makes you think that Ben Affleck's a good Batman.
There is no logic behind your comparison there, but okay.
At least I look cute while doing it.
Fair enough. Dane, let everyone know where they can find you on social media. We're wrapping up for the day.
I think fun on Twitter. But, guys, I am not only a Brett Stan and a Mary simp, I am also a Shane Cashman super fan. And I believe that you guys will be watching this on Friday, which means that very, very soon, when you're watching this, the second episode of Tales from the Inverted World Season 2 will be out. I encourage everyone to watch it and subscribe. This season is incredible, and the whole team is doing great work.
Comments have been great. I've been reading Shane was showing me some of the comments. It's great to see it's doing so well.
Yep.
So, Mary, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram or WeChat at Closer Kitty. Whenever I post articles on timcast.com, I promote them there. And I just want to say it's been so lonely and heartbreaking to not hear your chats today. But we're going to be live later, so I'm going to be fine. Don't worry about me.
That was what I was about to say next. Guys, thank you so much for watching this pre-recorded episode. And it does feel weirdly lonely not to be interrupted every few minutes with people giving us their take on things, which is, once you get into that, that becomes part of the show as much as anything else. So this has been a unique experience. But thank you guys for bearing with us while we get through this little off-kilter week. But we will be back next Monday live, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And from there on out, the show should not be interrupted Monday through Friday right here on youtube.com. That is Pop Culture Crisis. We are also on social media. We are on Twitter at popculture_show, Facebook and TikTok at Pop Culture Crisis, Instagram at Pop Culture Crisis Pod. And if you listen to the show still, which some people still do, we are on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, Pandora, and Spotify. We will be back with another episode on Monday. We'll see you then, guys. Bye.
Bye.